being up here is helpful for people in the back. So I will now train myself to stay put, stay where I'm supposed to be. Divine order. I know at Unity we love to throw these sayings around, like everybody should just understand what that means. And so if we haven't really studied it or sat with it, we might have, we might have an interpretation that is limiting as opposed to expanding. And of course, you can decide whatever you want with any of these things. It's entirely up to you. But I like to play with these ideas and see where they can take me. So I wrote here, divine order isn't about rigid control or everything going the way we expect. It's about aligning ourselves with a deeper rhythm of life, trusting that even when things don't make sense, they're unfolding exactly as they must. And when we stop resisting and start flowing with the process, we shift from struggle to grace. Anybody had that feeling, when you just finally stop resisting? It can also look like stopping forcing something. Ever done that? Ever been like so pushing on something so hard to be a certain way and it keeps pushing back? I remember my grade 9 science teacher gave us this example of force, of equal force. And he had us all push on the wall. And no matter how hard I pushed, the wall matched me every step. I could not out-push the wall pushing back at me. And I've never forgotten that. And that's kind of like we can do that in life, right? We can just keep pushing at something and it just keeps pushing back. And sometimes we need to let that go and take a rest, take a breath from it. This concept is woven into spiritual traditions such as New Thought, Unity, Transcendentalism, Taoism, and Stoicism. Each one of these offers insight into how we can live in harmony with divine order rather than against it. And so I was going through some, those little SD cards that you get for putting stuff in memory. I was going through some of those cards this morning to see what was on them because I needed one for today. And I popped one in and I came across some recordings from a few years ago. So maybe you could, Marie, put this, here we go. So speaking of divine order and things going a certain way or showing up as they need to, first of all, I don't know if we've ever really acknowledged Ken for what he did during COVID and showing up every Sunday and singing his heart out for us into an empty room. We may have, but it's okay to visit that again. Just, and there were people involved. There was Patricia and myself and Nico, and Josh showed up from time to time, and other vocalists that showed up on occasion. But Ken showed up almost every single week and never asked for anything from us. So Ken, I just want to acknowledge you. So as I looked at this picture, prior to COVID, we had no online presence at all for our services. We didn't record anything. We didn't have any cameras. We didn't do anything of that nature. And it was something we had talked about. In the boardroom, we had talked about it. Patricia and I had talked about it. Like, wouldn't it be great? Oh, that'd be so great. It's like, yeah, that would be great. And then, let's go have some potato chips and chill out, right? Is what we would do. And then COVID happened, and it forced us to rethink how we did things very quickly. And I'm happy to say that literally the very next Sunday, we were online. Just like that. It just happened, and it grew to where we are today. when I think of that photo of, we had a microphone at the piano, we had a microphone for the speaker, and you can see there's a microphone in front of Ken that was picking up the room. That's it. That was, and I was listening to it this morning, and I was like, man, we actually sound pretty good. Maybe we should go back to one microphone in the room. But I kind of reflect on it that it showed up exactly when it needed to show up. That we operated in that intelligence of divine order. We didn't argue with what was going on. We didn't try to fight the universe. We just stepped into action and moved forward and started to do things in a way that had us think a little bit bigger. And then we transitioned the office and the garage into a studio so that we could continue to do broadcasting and do some other, we had bigger ideas, I think, than just broadcasting Sunday. And we did that without ever thinking there would be a problem such as our main building. That building that we were in there is the one that burnt down. So we then had a place to go without missing a beat. Yet again, we just were able to continue. And now we find ourselves here. And I think, we can look at all of those moments as trouble, and we can also look at it as life unfolds exactly as it should or as it needs to for wherever we are in life. Wherever we are, wherever we find ourselves, we can see it unfolding for us. And if we can just stop fighting with ourselves. Anybody do that? It's not just me, right? The internal arguments, the internal shaming, the internal rage at ourselves, getting jealous about things, like all of those lower thought and emotional patterns that we can run into. If we can remove those and work on those, we can find ourselves in a divine order where we are being divine and we can allow things to unfold in a very orderly manner. And sometimes it might feel like chaos, but I also think that chaos is orderly. And it's showing up and showing us something that we need to see. And so sometimes we need to surrender, right, to things. And surrender is actually not weakness, it's strength. To be able to surrender to something requires great strength and will from ourselves. It requires a higher understanding, a higher learning, a higher knowing of ourselves in order to actually surrender. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that there's a wisdom greater than our personal preferences. Surrendering to divine order is about choosing faith over fear. And not that faith of, I believe in something, but that faith of knowing. You ever just know something? Right? You just know it. And that's what we can count on. Knowing that when we stop forcing, we create space for something better to emerge. And then we can call on love as our harmonizing power. Love brings divine order into balance. It realigns our perspective. It softens our edges. It allows us to act from a place of wisdom rather than reaction. Love in its highest form doesn't mean avoiding hard truths. It means meeting life with compassion and clarity, even in difficult moments. Even in those moments where we're really challenged by something. Imagine if we could bring love to it, right? And allow ourselves to breathe. I was doing a live session yesterday morning, and I coined the phrase accidentally, at least I think I did, although I probably didn't. I'm sure it's been coined somewhere else in the world, but it's BPS, breathe, pause, smile. Exactly, so just try that. Just take a breath, pause, and then smile. And smile as if you're seeing that smile within yourself. Not just on your face, but you're actually smiling to yourself internally. That anytime life is lifing you, you can just breathe, pause, smile. And it'll have an effect. There will be a change. Yes, life lifes us, doesn't it? Yes, those moments where it feels out of control. So this is about inner alignment over outer validation. The world may not always validate our path. That's okay. True peace comes from internal alignment, not external approval. The deeper we trust divine order, the less we rely on outside confirmation to feel secure in our choices. As I was putting my thoughts together around this, I was thinking of my career as a musician, that I was, 20-something years old, thought I knew everything, and knew all of the stuff that sucked musically, right? I had a very narrow understanding of music, but for me that was perfect at that time. And then I received this opportunity to play in a reggae band. And I didn't even listen to reggae. The most reggae I knew was the Police, who spiced up some of their music with reggae. I'd never heard of Bob Marley. I'd never listened to it. And you also have to understand that I grew up in Taoism. Everybody know where Taoism is? Like, you want to talk about a WASP, white neighborhood school, that was Taoism. And I'm not knocking it, but really, it was like, back when I moved there was downtown Vancouver, which you needed a bridge to get out of the city, then you needed another bridge to get out of the second part of the city, then you had to go through a tunnel under the Fraser River, and then miles of farmland to get to Tawasin out on some point, and it was mostly all white families that lived there, and so that's where I grew up. So my understanding of the world was pretty small. And all of a sudden, I found myself playing in a reggae band with a bunch of people from Jamaica who had dreadlocks and a whole different language to speak. And I'm this like white kid trying to figure out this music that I had never really heard before. And I so appreciate Dennis, our lead singer, who sounded just like Bob Marley. And he used to play with some of the guys in the Wailers when he was in Jamaica. And he lived to Canada. He'd lived here for quite a while. And he was determined to teach me how to play authentic reggae one-drop music. And I look back on that, speaking of divine order, I look back on that going, that was like my musical ability completely opened up for me at that time. And I allowed it. Like, I didn't have a prejudice about it. I was like, okay, I'll go play some reggae. I have no idea what it is. And I can remember sitting in practices, struggling immensely of trying to, so here, I'll give you the example. So rock goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It's very, and if you're playing pop music, you can imagine a pogo stick, right? Doing, 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 doing. It's got, pop music has no feel to it. It's just a bounce, right? And so now I'm in this reggae band where I'm supposed to go. It's like on 1s and 3s now. It's not on the 2s and 4s anymore. So it's completely backwards to what I knew how to play. And I had to like slink in, like I had to get slinky and move my body differently in order to figure it out.
You gotta play some today for us.
And I am so grateful because after that, the world of music completely shifted. And I could now play so many different ways and play off time. So when I came back to playing rock and roll, all of a sudden I had a timbali beside me because I could play these off times doing reggae and now bring that into rock music and pop music. And so now, as you all know, I'm playing in a swing band. And what's fascinating to me is swing is very similar to reggae. And so I actually find times that, because I don't read music and nobody really cares what I do in the band, apparently, because I just do whatever I think I should do and it works out. I now play reggae at times in the swing beats. And I don't think anybody actually knows that I'm doing that, except me, but it's like my little giggle, right? I get to, oh, look what I can do. I can actually turn this into a reggae beat. Anyhow, the point of this is that if we allow ourselves to actually say yes to life and stop forcing. Imagine if I had forced that I was only going to play in a rock band and it had to be this way, that my music could only be this channel that I'm on. I would have missed out on such a great spice of life in terms of playing music and allowing myself to get afraid, to be afraid of something brand new and learning it. And I think have we all had moments like that, right? Where we've done that? And yet, do we not forget? Right? We forget that we actually have done that. And so we're faced with these moments again in our life where we're kind of bouncing up against that growth of ourselves, and we're a little bit afraid to take that step into the unknown and trust that divine order, our divine being, knows what it requires. And if we allow life, it actually works out. But we can get stuck trying to push, trying to force things and argue with the way things are unfolding. Have you ever had an argument with how life is working or not working? How does that go? Do you win it? I'm curious. Have you won the argument ever? No, you kind of go around the block and then you end up right back where you started, going, okay, now what? But we have to go through that, don't we? We have to experience that. Our emotions need to go through that, and we need to process. And this is maybe where, breathe, pause, smile can help. This is where having a spiritual understanding, having unity, having principles in which to manage ourselves can actually work in our favor. And that's really what coming here on a Sunday is, or having a meditation every day. It's a practice, right? It's an ability to transcend the experience that we might be having. And the more that we do that, the easier it is. We can get, I remember when I did the Landmark Forum, there was this phrase, on it. When you're on it. So what that means is like you're on something, and not drugs, but on, like, it's gotta be different. So you're like so on something, and you're fighting and fighting and fighting. And if you could just get off it, right? Just actually take a step back and allow it to be in front of you. And I often think of Michael Singer in The Untethered Soul, where he talks about standing back. And I can imagine it's like you're back here looking down at yourself going, what are you doing? Let's take a breath for a moment. I think the Taoism, the Tao embodies the essence of divine order because it comes from that fundamental belief that life moves in a natural rhythm, and suffering often comes from fighting the rhythm instead of flowing with it. Right? If we can get to that place of flowing. And then with meditation and prayer, it's that opportunity for reflection, right? To sit in the stillness, to sit in the quiet, and reflect on what's happening, asking a question, bringing that into a meditation. Why is this here? Why am I getting this show up in my life? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? And then we get those answers from our divine knowledge. We can see for ourselves what might be the next step. So finally, divine order isn't about blind faith. It's about choosing to trust the process of life even when we don't have all the answers. It calls us to let go where we are gripping. Huh? Ever been squeezing something so tightly? It's like you're squeezing the life out of it, right? It needs to breathe. Recognize that everything, yes, even the hard stuff, is moving us toward growth, our truth, our deeper alignment. It's okay to have those moments where you don't have the answer yet. That's the key, is you don't have the answer yet. But if we are willing to sit with it, I think of, just as I say that, what I think I see in the challenge for young people today is everything happens, there's no breath anymore. They think they need to respond to something instantly. They get a text and it's like, oh, I have to answer that. It's like, well, actually, you don't. You could actually sit with it. You don't need to be on all the time. You can actually take a step back. So I wonder where we're headed when I think of that will there be a place where as the young people today age, they'll find that place to pause. They'll find that they can actually take a breath and allow things to stew a little bit, right? To simmer, so to speak.